What's up, guys? Welcome back to part one. I guess this is part one. If you didn't see the first video of picking up this 2019 Ford Explorer from the auction, go back and check out that video right up here and then come back to this one. But this is part one of the Ford Explorer. So we're gonna start off with a little bit of a story time. So I bought this thing over a year ago in September, basically September 10th of 2020. So essentially we brought it back to the shop, had some issues with it, had a lot of frame damage. So we sent it off to the frame shop. So the frame shop is a guy that I know, and he's kind of like a hobby guy. It's not like I took it to like a body shop and you know they had it on there for 10 hours and then that was it. It was like, okay, we work on this thing, I'm gonna work on it for an hour. Okay, we need to order this to make sure this lines up. Kind of one of those type of things. And I actually picked it up 5 months later. So when we picked it up from the frame shop, it was right down the street, so less than a mile away from the shop. You know, it doesn't have a radiator in it. It's kind of a cool day. I don't really feel like trailering it. I would rather not like tow it. It runs and drives. Let's just drive it to the shop. And that's where we have our biggest issue, which was that the valve cover was broken and the little plastic dipstick that goes in the top of it, when I pulled it out, it was broken. And there was the little piece, the little tiny little piece down at the bottom where you couldn't get it out. So it's a plastic valve cover and a plastic thing, and so I couldn't check the oil. When I first started the engine, it had a turbo line broken off the front and it was spewing oil out of the front. So I went with the theory, if it has oil spewing out of the front of the engine, it has oil. You know, kind of like if your engine is leaking, that means it has oil. So you're good. This was a huge mistake on my part. We drove it out of the frame shop. Everything sounded fine. I drove it halfway to the shop, so about a half a mile. All of a sudden I started hearing this rattling. The front cover of this engine was completely destroyed. Front cover was busted, valve cover was busted, the engine mount was broken. We replaced the engine mount. So I just assumed that there was a piece of the front cover that was touching the timing chain. I was like, oh, okay, no big deal. We'll get it back to the shop. So we towed it back to the shop. When we got here, I was like, okay, cool. It's just the timing stuff, because there was some stuff kind of hanging in that area. I said I'm gonna order all of the front cover stuff from Lasco Auto Parts. I placed the order. Everything showed up a week later. We were busy with some stuff. About 2 or 3 weeks later, I finally decided to pull this thing in, pulled the front cover off, and when I did that, I looked down in the oil pan, and what I found was there was less than 1 quart of oil and a bunch of bearing material. It wasn't knocking, it was just like rattling really bad. So what I decided to do at that time, I was like, okay, we either have to rebuild this engine or I could find another engine. I didn't want to like go through rebuilding it, just throwing new bearings in it, chancing it, spending all that time. I just wanted to put another engine out of a wrecked Explorer in here and get it running again. So that's exactly what I did. But instead of just getting on eBay and spending between $2,500 and $3,000 on an engine that is just known good, run, like complete, no issues, I found one locally that I actually got delivered here, and it was out of pretty much the same exact wreck. Front cover was busted, valve covers were busted. It essentially needed a lot of work. I was like, okay, I already bought a new valve cover, I already bought the new front cover. This engine, instead of it being $2,500, it was like $1,200. It was out of like a 50,000 mile wrecked vehicle. So I was like, okay, we should be good. As soon as we pulled the broken front cover off of that engine is when we found out that it was actually out of time. There was actually a piece of the timing cover underneath one of the chains, basically. So it like stretched the chain, did a bunch of other stuff. So finally that brings us to a couple of weeks ago, right before this whole shop sale / shop cleanup. So what we ended up doing is we said, okay, we have all these parts for the Ford Explorer. Let's just get it together. Let's get it so it runs and drives. We can move it. We don't have to worry about rattling, doing a bunch of stuff like that. We have the valve covers. We have the front cover. Let's put it together. That is catching you guys up to speed. It's crazy that I've had this thing a little over a year now. Now we are just getting to this point in the project. Huge shout out to Lasco Ford. I ordered all the parts off of them. Check out the link in the description. But let's get on with this video and see how pumped Sean is to try and put this new junkyard engine back together with old components and make this thing run by the end of this video.
We make the strings louder.
We have a ton of parts for this thing that have just been laying around. So we're gonna start off by pulling this thing outside, pressure washing it, getting it all clean. It does look pretty dirty just from sitting around outside. You can see all the dust and all the stuff on it. I actually haven't even washed it one bit. Get it washed, then we're gonna pull it inside, pull the engine, and basically make this engine complete, put it back together, and then
we can drive it.
Then we could actually drive it around.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we have headlights, front bumper, fenders, condenser, radiator. Another thing is there's gonna be a couple missing parts that we have to figure out, so we gotta do that too.
All right, go ahead.
Oh!
It's not working, huh?
6 volt, buddy. That battery is big.
So that emblem represents, once again, found on road dead.
Nice Ford.
Nice break.
It's 14 degrees outside today.
Can you believe that?
Here we are, washing cars, doing stuff, trying to make them run. It's only been a year. This thing's gonna be really nice when it's done. I hope. So basically all of the wiring harness unhooked, fuel lines, coolant lines for like the heater and whatnot, and then exhaust. So basically now we're ready to just basically pull the wheels off, pull the calipers off, undo the wheel sensors and stuff, and then take these cradle bolts out and drop the whole cradle out.
Should be good
I
to
got
go.
the steering shaft unbolted. So I think as of now we're sitting pretty.
Pretty good.
Everywhere we look, we just find more things we don't want to see, but that's kind of how it goes with jobs like this. So
Yeah. No, I wish I didn't buy this thing, but you know, that's probably why it sat outside for a year without us touching it. All right, brake calipers are hung by the fender with care.
with care.
In hopes that the subframe would soon be down there.
That's the plan here in just a minute.
The timing marks were all crossed. How do we do this? The timing marks aligned with compression intact.
Well,
With-
the issue is that the timing
Okay.
marks didn't align, and then we decided to spray the motor down with brake cleaner because it was sitting out in the shop wide open for like the last 6 months. Does anybody
Compression?
in the comments know how to time motors?
I'm trying to come up with like a Christmas, like
thing.
a Christmas
Christmas is
carol,
over, buddy.
like a Christmas carol for this.
He is still going ahead.
Yeah.
Jack stands placed under the subframe with care. I don't know why I'm trying to come up with some Christmas rhymes right now.
Alright guys, so a little bit of an update over here. Got the engine out, sitting kind of on the cradle, but it's actually really not a cradle. It's more of just like a subframe, right?
Yeah, it's just like a subframe. The motor only has one mount on the cradle.
Only in the back. Otherwise, the engine stays in the engine bay, and like the cradle is mostly just for the suspension. Technically, we could have just pulled this thing straight out of the top, but I think this works. I think it, you know, there wasn't really anything hooked up in the front anyhow. This little thing on the drive shaft right here is actually broken too, so we need to replace that, or just see if we could replace the whole drive shaft. Sean went ahead, pulled the timing chain and the stuff off of this engine, and is actually putting it on this one right now. So this thing should be in time, yeah? It was one tooth off because this engine broke the front cover, so a piece of the front cover went underneath. So that's why we swapped the chain, just in case it stretched it, the different tensioner, all the other stuff basically from this engine. Yeah, should be good now. Everything is all clean. So now once this thing is back in time, basically put oil pan, front cover, valve covers and everything on it, continue cleaning it up, swap the engines out, plop it up in there, swap all the turbos and stuff. There's a ton of stuff that actually goes on this engine, but you know, turbos, all those things, get everything on there, plow back in there, and we should be ready to rip. Yeah, beautiful valve cover, brand new. All right, moment of truth. Will it start? Buddy, this thing is brand new now. We got a brand new EcoBoost, brand new valve covers. If you guys want to see the reason why I blew this thing, where'd that other valve cover go? This is why, is because this thing, the dipstick was stuck down in there, and I didn't check the oil, and then we drove it with no oil. But so look at this, new valve cover, new dipstick, high pressure fuel pump all torqued down. We got coil packs, we got spark plugs in it. Sean did a leak down test on it. I think we're good. But maybe we should pull these valve covers off and paint them wrinkle red. I think that'd be good.
Let's
That'd
get
be
the
good
motor
for us.
done first, and we'll do that.
Yeah. Maybe we could pull the motor back apart and do forged pistons and rods and stuff. Alright guys, so a little bit of an update. As you can see, this engine is already in there. Sean, what do you think?
These things are pretty. Obviously, it's a transverse mounted V6, twin turbo at that, so there's not room for anything. Plus all-wheel drive, exactly. So there's a transfer case, there's turbos on both sides, transverse mounted. Getting it in and out is kind of a process with certain things. For instance, so this back turbo and manifold
almost makes the most sense in my opinion to have that on before you drop the motor. The front one you have to leave off because there's some wiring that goes down behind there for the crank sensor and stuff, I believe. So you have to leave that turbo off to get the wiring harness in, and once the wiring harness is in, then you put the turbo, hook up all the lines, and kind of go from there. So there's it's a learning process, but you know, it's one of those things, once you do it once, you can, you know, do it 10 times with your eyes closed. But I just hope I don't ever have to do it again. So
the engine actually looks really nice. I mean, it's kind of weird. You don't really believe that it's going to be a good engine until you get like all the valve covers and stuff back on it, and then once the valve covers are on, you're like, wow, this thing's actually looks like it's going to work again. We got the new valve cover and everything in the front, new front cover, new rear valve cover, new motor mounts, or new, I think some of these studs were new. Yeah, it's definitely coming together. Yeah, definitely kind of a stressful parts buying process, and then timing this thing, and
a lot
then
that goes into it.
but I mean, it's close now, so I'm stoked to basically just get her in there and see how she does. All right, guys, so engine is completely back in here, basically ready to go. Fuel lines are hooked up, wiring is hooked up, the battery is hooked up. We actually have oil in it. We confirmed that it has oil, it has a fresh filter, everything's ready to go. So we're gonna see this thing will fire up. Hey, did you find the key? It's not knocking. That's good. I mean, it seems like it's pushing out.
Why is that? Is there another motor mount on this thing?
Good. I'm glad it runs. Runs great.
I've been looking at this thing sitting in a field, for a dusty field, for the last year. Now, and 2 days later, brand new. The tranny does what it's supposed to do. Flips this up. We didn't get that on video, did we?
No.
I think it was up.
No, the wiring, the connector for the transmission wiring was messed up.
So I fixed that.
You could say things are moving along quite nicely.
All right, guys. So as you can see, the Ford Explorer, it runs and drives now. Sean did a great job. Sean, hey, great job. Yeah, thank you, buddy.
It runs good. It doesn't sound like it's rattling anymore. And again, we could have probably like just put like bearings in that other engine, but since this thing is going to be, you know, the family hauler mobile, I just wanted to have like an engine that never had any issues in it. So we already sent that other engine off to scrap. I just want to give a huge shout out before we close out this video to Lasco Auto Parts. They're a huge help in getting all of the parts and stuff necessary, especially for the engine side of things. It's just crazy if you go to the dealer and you find a part, it's like MSRP online is like $240. You go to your dealer, it's $265, but then you get on Lasco Auto Parts and it's $180. So check out LascoAutoParts.com. Appreciate them helping me out, getting some parts at a discounted price for this thing, and helping you guys out as well. But yeah, hope you guys are stoked about this Ford Explorer. I know Jamie's really excited to get it done. And like I said, we put it in another order for almost $2 grand of all the other stuff that we should need to put the whole front of this thing back together and get it painted and all that other stuff. So appreciate you guys watching. See you in the next one.